was honored by Rowan University. That's 4 under 40. That's not a typo. 4 under 40 award by the Alumni Association here, Alumni Awards. Look, at age 25, he began teaching in college, hence the reason he's called the young professor. You can explain that as well. And I love this part, that he started in his entertainment industry working part-time as a host of weekly trivia games at a restaurant. Now that's a man that wants to get a gig, right?
Yeah, I mean, anybody ever play trivia over at Landmark? Is that something they still do? I have memories of this. That's what I used to do. It's where I learned that a female turkey is called a Jenny. I remember learning that at Landmark. So if you didn't know that, you do now. You're welcome. And yeah, I started as a trivia host before I started working in sports and entertainment in any other fashion.
All right, so let's start with the beginning. Where you grew up, how you ended up here at Rowan.
So I grew up about an hour and a half northeast of here. I grew up in Rahway, New Jersey. Graduated from Rahway High School. Anybody from that area? From Union County? Nobody? All right, well, we got one that was in that area. Are all South Jersey people?
No, north and south.
North and south.
And south.
What do you guys call those little things you put on ice cream? One of those?
Sprinkle.
Yeah, we got it. The house is divided as usual. I see that. It was always one of my favorite debates when I was here. The sprinkles versus jimmies and subs versus hoagies and all that sort of stuff. Your own language down in South Jersey. But yes, I grew up in Rahway, New Jersey, and I decided to come to Rowan University because my high school girlfriend was going there, and so that was not really probably the way I would recommend making an important life decision like that, like your education. But that is the reason I made that decision. I don't think I would have admitted that at the time, but I can look back now and admit that. And while we did not make it through even freshman year, I was glad that I ultimately stayed because from sophomore year on, I began enjoying and maximizing my experience here as a student. So I was here, gosh, 20 years ago, I started as a freshman, and I was a very lost freshman 20 years ago in 2004, and I graduated in 2008.
All right, so you were a psychology major here. So how does a psychology major end up going in this space?
I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. In fact, I don't think I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up until about 3 years ago. So psychology was something that I had an interest in at the time. And in my brain, the way I kind of looked at it was, well, if you understand how people operate, what makes people work, I think that's a valuable skill that can help you anywhere. And so psychology seemed like an area of study that would serve me in some way, shape, or form, which I think that was, I don't know that, again, that's why you should settle on a major, but I think that has proven true in everything that I've done. So I came to school, I was a first generation college student, so my parents didn't go, no one had ever gone through this process before, and I decided psychology at Rowan was the way to go. And as I got here, as I got invested in my studies, I did well, and I connected with my professors on campus. Dr. DJ Angeloni was a mentor of mine while I was here. But I started to realize that working in the field of psychology directly was not something that had appealed to me. But you start something, you finish it through. But my sophomore year of college here, I was very active in the rec center. Everybody go to the rec center quite a bit? You all should all be raising your hands. If you're not going to that space, you should definitely be going there. I applied to get a job over at the rec center. At the time, it was one of the, it may still be, Kevin could probably tell us, Kevin George is here. It was one of the more desirable places to work on campus, and it was a very rigorous interview process. I think I went through 3 rounds of interviews as a student to work at to tell people to bring their towel up to the gym is what we would do. Yell at them to not drop weights and bring your towel. But it was something that I got at the end of my sophomore year. I started working with the rec center in my junior year, and it completely changed my life work because it was a great atmosphere led by a fantastic pro staff. Some of them are still here, which is awesome to see. And it was the first place I had ever worked where I realized you can have fun while you're working. We worked hard in that place. I mean, that place was spotless, it was clean, it was put together. We also had a ton of fun together at work. We had a ton of fun outside of work. And around November of my junior year, one of the grad assistants had asked me to tag along to a conference that they were going to. It was a NERSA conference up in New Hampshire, I want to say. And that's where I learned that you could pursue a career in campus rec. And so that was what I thought I wanted to do. I kind of went all in on that direction and started getting more involved. I became a building manager. We created a facility operations department at the time. I started helping with facility operations and making sure everything was clean and all the supplies we had, and working on the special event side of things and getting involved there. And fell in love with that, and ultimately decided that was the path I was going to go. So my senior year, I was looking to continue on and get my master's degree, because that was the path that seemed the way that you needed to go. And I interviewed with colleges from all over the country that were offering grad assistant positions. Everybody know what a graduate assistant position is? So departments in colleges all throughout the country, they typically have, anybody have like a TA? Any of their classes teaching anything? Okay, so they're a graduate assistant, but in the academic realm. So they are getting their master's degree, they're studying for that here, and the university pays for it, but in return, their labor is they teach some entry-level classes. Well, graduate assistants do the same thing, they just work for the various departments. So athletics has graduate assistants, recreation has graduate assistants. And so I was looking for a grad assistantship where I would get my master's paid for, because Lord knows I didn't want to take on any more debt. And I wanted to work in campus rec. And I wound up going to Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. There was another Rowan alum, his name was Dave Hagedorn. He had kind of gone through the same path I did. He was a building manager at the rec center, and he went to SIUE. He hired me, and so I went and got my master's in kinesiology. So I went from psychology to kinesiology, movement sciences, but my subtrack was in sport and exercise behavior. So it was still mostly psychology-based, a little bit of sport management, and that's what I studied on that side. So that's my educational background. You're probably wondering, so like, how do you get from there to here? And none of this story makes sense, by the way. Like, none of this is linear. This is not a path anyone would have mapped out, but this is how I got there. I took a job in the private sector after college down in Florida. When I was in high school, I didn't play sports, but I was really involved in my ROTC. And I was the commander of my unit. I was ranked second in the country as a commander, which now that I'm an announcer, people were trying to tell me this was a skill I had all this time without me realizing it. But I did a project in grad school on this company that ran our national championships, and those took place down in Daytona Beach, Florida. Well, that company hired me out of college. So they brought me down. That's how I moved to Florida, and I worked for them for about a year. I realized it wasn't the fit that I needed, and so I decided I wanted to go back into working in higher education. At the time, again, this is where making good life choices is important. I had met someone and was expecting a child, and so now the opportunity to move and kind of pursue a career that I wanted to go into, like recreation, was not necessarily in the cards. I was kind of stuck in one spot. So I started working in college admissions, and didn't love that. It was not the best scenario. But about 6-7 months into that, I was looking to transfer campuses. There were multiple campuses throughout Florida, and a place that was a little bit closer to where my son was living was, they had a position for admissions, but they saw my degree, and they said, hey, we have this program. It's called Sports Medicine and Fitness Technology. We're looking for someone to be an adjunct professor. Are you interested? And I just said yes. I had never sought to teach. I had never taken any education courses in order to do that specifically. But I used to give some pretty killer presentations when I was in grad school. I liked doing that side of it. So I figured, why not? I don't like this admissions thing. I just need to get my foot in the door and get my life together. And they hired me. And I was a 25-year-old college professor that was working with non-traditional students. So a lot of these were people that were in former military, so a lot of them are older than me, some of them were my parents' age, and I'm this wet behind the ears 25-year-old kid being asked to teach essentially an athletic injury prevention course, which that was not in my psych realm or in my graduate realm, but I was really motivated. I was a single father at the time. I wanted to be involved in my son's life. I was not happy where life had been taking me at that time, and I knew I needed to rectify that. So I worked extremely, extremely hard to be a credible, qualified professor to do all those things. And man, I studied harder as a professor than I ever did as a student, if I'll be honest. And I wound up teaching college for about 7.5 years. Now, in between there, the campus I was at got rid of my program. So I had to take a job outside of out of college for a little while. I was doing a sales job. I needed extra money. I had a family and my wife. We had a daughter together. She had 2 kids, so big family, lots of responsibility. Needed extra money. So I took on trivia hosting at night in bars and restaurants. And so that's when I started moonlighting doing that. My old college, another campus about an hour away from me, they were looking for a professor, so I became a professor again. So I was teaching by day and entertaining by night. And people started every single week coming up to me and saying, "You sound like you work in sports. Do you have an announcer's voice? Is that something that you do?" And I just kind of got tired of telling people no. And so then I sought to find a way to do that, because I had a lot of public speaking experience. But how do you get into sports? How do you get into that world if you've never done it before, especially if you don't have a specific educational background in it? Well, I was a big wrestling fan. Any wrestling fans in the house? Somebody? Yeah, I'm a guy right here, all right? I was a big wrestling fan. The Attitude Era hit when I was like in middle school, so like Stone Cold and The Rock. I loved all that stuff, right? Followed it, watched it every Monday night in my dorms here or in the townhouses when I was living there. Loved wrestling. Well, there was a wrestling school, an independent wrestling promotion, about 30 minutes away from where I lived in Florida. And I had my eye on it, and they put out an ad. They said they were looking for an announcer. And the qualifications for the job were you need to be available Saturdays, and you can't suck. This is what was written in the post. And I said, well, I'm available Saturdays. So I really didn't know how the rest of it was going to go. But they said, okay, well, I sent out a little tryout video they asked for, and they said, well, when can you come out? I said, well, you have a show this Saturday. I'll just come then. They said, great, we'll see you there. Didn't give me time, didn't tell me how to do this or what that was going to look like. And so I showed up, I grabbed a blazer and a polo shirt, so I did not kind of refine my style at the time. I was still working that part out. And I showed up for 7:30 show. I think I showed up like 7:10. I was expecting them to say, just meet everybody and maybe they'd give me a match or 2 to kind of go out and work the crowd. And they brought me back into the locker room, which was significantly smaller than the room we were in, with a bunch of sweaty dudes that I have never met. And there was a piece of paper stapled to the wall, written in pen, and it was the cards, so it was all the matches that were on there, the names of the wrestlers that were on. And he said, this is the card, these are the guys. We'll try out tonight, we'll see you out there. And the show starts in about 20 minutes. So I had brought some small slips of paper and things with me to get myself. He said, okay, just like I had to do when I was a college professor. You got this, right? Yep, I got it. And I went, I shake all these guys down, all these sweaty, half-naked dudes are looking at me like, who's this nerd? Why is he in here talking to us right now? But I got all the info, and I went out, and I announced the entire show. And I did a job that was not half bad for someone who had never done it before. And to the point where the promoter, at the very end, he grabbed me, pulled me aside, and slipped me a $20 bill and said, that was surprisingly good. Can you keep coming back? And that was almost 7 years ago, and week after week, I'm still coming back. So I started there, took my one set of videos I had from there and applied to work for the arena football team in Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Sharks. I said, I have announcing experience. I worked one show. And I had these videos, and they were like, wow, these sound pretty good, yeah. Well, you could be our host for this season. And so now I'm working in the arena in Jacksonville in front of 6, 7, 8, 9,000 fans, depending on what week it was. So within a year, I started working in professional football and professional wrestling, and then picked up MMA, boxing, and then eventually minor league baseball before discovering the Savannah Bananas, which is where you can find me now.
All right, so that's an interesting background. So I want to go to the students, let them ask the questions, because they're going to have plenty about the Savannah Bananas. Sean, you want to go first?
Yes.
What do you got?
Wow. How did you get hooked up with the kind of bananas that on True TV on Friday nights?
So I found out about the Bananas in 2021. I was getting ready for my first season in minor league baseball, working with the Daytona Tortugas, and I saw a video of them playing, and I saw the guy on stilts. Dakota Albritton is his real name, we call him Stilts, but I saw that and it blew me away, because I'd already been working in a very colorful world for a little while at this point. And I was looking to really kind of up my game as a performer, as an announcer, as a host, And I saw that and I went, oh my God, what is that? And I fell down this rabbit hole where I just had to learn everything I could about it. I watched probably every video that I could find. I saw that the owner, Jesse Cole, had a book. He had one book at the time. He has 3 books now, but his book was called Find Your Yellow Tux, and it was all about standing out in business and standing out in life and how that takes you places. And I was already wearing crazy suits and doing all this weird stuff. I was like, oh my God, these are my people. This is my tribe. This is where I need to be, what I need to learn from. And I only live 3 hours south of Savannah, which, in working in independent wrestling, that's a whole different topic for a whole story. I can tell you the most strange, bizarre, odd, unseedy stories that are you could imagine in that world. But you're working all over in gyms and bingo halls and parking lots and stuff, and you're driving all over God's green earth to get to these places for a hot dog and a handshake. Maybe you make a little money, maybe you don't, but you're doing it just to get your reps in and get out there. So I've been used to driving and doing a whole lot for a whole little, and Savannah's not that far away. And so I reached out to Jesse Cole, our owner, because at the time, this was before the Bananas had really exploded in popularity. People that really follow baseball, I think they were aware. There was buzz brewing. I had heard of them, but I didn't know what they were. I reached out to Jesse, and he wrote back to me. And I said, I'm a big fan. I read your book. I love everything you're doing. This is what I do. I really want to come out and come to a game at some point. And he goes, well, if you do come out, let me know, and I'll give you and your family a tour. I'd love to meet you. Well, I got tickets to a game that summer, and I reached out to Jesse. I said, hey, I got tickets to this game. I'm coming out. I said, and by the way, I'm going to pack my suit just in case, because like I said, I'm an announcer and a host, so if you need anything, I'm going to be prepared. And he goes, you know, actually, that game that you're coming to, our announcer, he's never missed a game before, but he's not going to be there that night. I might have something for you. And so I got a chance to do the starting lineups and go out in a black suit in the middle of summer in July in Savannah, Georgia. Do not recommend it, by the way. That was not a good uniform choice. But I went out and I announced the starting lineup, and I announced all the guys through the first couple of times, and then got to go and enjoy the game with my family. I met Jesse, I met his wife Emily, I met a lot of our staff. They made me feel very welcome and very much at home. And I watched this night with my wife, and I've never, ever, ever seen my kids, my family have that much fun, have that much joy, and anything before or since that first time. And the show then wasn't even as good as it is now. It was a great show. But what we're doing now is so much better. But at that time, it was just, this feeling I had was just unbelievable. And I just, how do you go away from that? I wanted more. And as they announced their 2022 World Tour that year, I begged and pleaded and looked for any way that I could, because I was just there for a one-off appearance. They weren't looking for me. There wasn't a spot for me. They had a host, they had an announcer. What was I going to do? And I sent this video. I hired a violinist. I had a green screen in my classroom. I was a high school teacher. I had a green screen in the back, and I was shooting I was putting myself in all the stadiums with them in the background, and just begging them to let me come on, just so I could learn and just do more, because I started to think that maybe there's something for me in entertainment outside of being in the classroom. It was just not something I was loving or just enjoying as much anymore. That thrill of being in front of the audience was it for me. And Jesse called me and he says, I don't know what to make of this here. We don't have anything. And I was like, dude, I will sell popcorn for you. I just want to learn what you're doing, because I've seen it and I know, and I just know how much I can gain from it. He goes, well, you're a little too talented to sell popcorn for us, so why don't you come up with some ideas? And so that's everything in our organization, is idea generation, trying new things. And so he tasked me with finding ideas, and I came up with some, and he said, all right, we're gonna bring you on. And so I got to go on the 2022 World Tour. It was 7 cities, and that was the year I think the Bananas really kind of came to the forefront of awareness in sports. That's when the first season of Bananaland was filmed. And you can see little glimpses of me as we're figuring this game and this sport, this presentation out. So that's how I wound up with the Bananas, and we've grown ever since. And yeah, we did 5 weeks in a row on True TV. I'm glad you were watching.
All right, who's next?
So what would be your favorite player that you've ever called for the Bananas or any professional sports?
Any professional sport?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you call it professional sports besides wrestling and stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm a wrestling guy first and foremost, and John Cena came out and played for us, and it really just doesn't get any cooler than that. Like I'm not even, it's more of a formal setting. I'm not gonna tell you the name of the first guy. The first name I ever announced in wrestling was like, a dirty joke was his name. Like that was his name. That's the first name that ever came out of my mouth. I did it in front of an audience smaller than this. And to go from that to 6 years later to working with John Cena, who is a bona fide star, not just in wrestling, but in pop culture, that was probably the single coolest moment for me. We've had a lot of really amazing athletes come through and people I got to work with, but for me, with my background, John Cena is top of the hill for me.
All right, to the back, go ahead. All right.
Out of all the stadiums you've been to, what has been your favorite?
My experience this year, my favorite experience was in Cleveland, but we went to Fenway Park. We got to perform in Fenway Park. We got to go inside the Green Monster. We got to sign the Green Monster that we weren't supposed to, but we did. And I think they just do that for everybody. They say you can't, and then everyone does. So that's the thing. But getting to stand out on the mound in Fenway Park and look up and see that and see 38,000 fans and just all the history and just how old that ballpark is and what it means to not just the city of Boston, but to the sport of baseball. It's just the coolest place ever.
Tell them what the wait list is for tickets for Bananas games.
So right now, and I saw this, I was telling people 2.5 million, but apparently that number has grown even since then. We have about 3 million people on the waiting list for tickets. So that's why when you ask who's been here, y'all must be on that waiting list. There are 3 million folks that are trying to come and see this thing. And this year we'll have performed in front of 1 million fans when it's all said and done in the next couple of weeks.
All right, right here.
All the traveling you do, like going from Georgia, Jacksonville, football, MMA, wrestling, do you ever get mentally exhausted?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I was with Kevin earlier, we went to the 7-Eleven, I got my high energy caffeine, like this comes in a can, man, that's where I'm at. Like you hit that 3 o'clock, I go, oh boy, and you just spin up and go again because you just gotta keep that train rolling.
If you don't know, Kevin George over there, Kevin just raised that from the Eagles Rec here on campus. You got Dean Sandy Tweedy here from the Adelman College of Communication Creative Arts. And then you got Dr. Julie Richmond, who's with our sports camp professor as well. So great to have them here as well. All right, who's next? Right here, Hannah. Here we go.
How do you guys balance, because obviously I've never been to a game, so all I see is like the TikToks and the social media. How do you guys balance entertaining the people that are in the stadium while also creating all that content for the outside world of the 3 million on the wait list?
So it's multiple sides of the house. So I primarily work on the live experience side of it. So that's our entertainment team. So the entertainment team is charged pretty much with all the things happening live in the game that are getting seen by the fans that are there that day. So pretty much most of what you would see from me on a game day, primarily that is for the live audience. There's a few spots I do where I'll make the broadcast to the people watching home. You might see me kind of in the background or setting up one of the weigh-ins for one of our social media pieces, but they're woven pretty seamlessly. Sometimes something will happen and you're like, I don't know what that was. And then social media pops up later, you go, that's what they were doing. But it's so quick, and there's so many things going on. It's like a 10-ring circus. Like your head has to be on a swivel at all if you're at one of our games. I like to say that if you've ever seen the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, where he really relives the same day over and over and over again, if you were to be a fan at our game one day, and that was your Groundhog Day, you had to relive that day over and over, I don't know how long it would take for you to see everything that happens at one of our games, because there's so many things going on. We are pretty good about weaving all of that together that you don't even notice that it's happening until after the fact when you get that stuff. So the fans at home, they're getting it either via social or via our broadcast. They're getting a different experience, but both groups, whether they're at home or in person, are getting a remarkably entertaining experience regardless.
As an in-game host, now they're playing games. They're playing a game.
Yes.
There's a script, I would imagine, to a certain extent. So can you share that part?
Sure. We have a script that is pretty comprehensive. I mean, our script includes a lot of different things. So our game begins very early. So I host a pre-show, a pre-show as a matter of fact, and before we even open the gates. It's usually an hour. If you're out in Philly this weekend, it's an hour and a half. So 3 o'clock on Saturday, I will be outside hosting the show from 3 to 4:30. That is scripted down pretty much to the minute. It's a variety show. A lot of our cast or characters or players that come out and perform and do other things, and skits and things that we've written and put in there. and then the gates open, and then at 5:15 is when the pregame pre-show starts, and that's scripted literally to the minute, sometimes to the 30-second mark of everything that's going on, and we can pretty much know what's going to happen there. That script is pretty solid, and we have things where we can either speed up or slow down, but once the game begins, that's where it's live, because the players are playing, and then everything else will be unscripted, because we have things scripted in between every single half inning, so there's 18 activation points, there's multiple social media content pieces that they're capturing throughout. We script all of that, but some of it requires us to be really adaptable. And a lot of the scripting is if-then scripted. So it's if this happens, then we do this. So if someone scores, and we know someone's going to score, then we're going to do this run scoring celebration. If someone gets hit by a pitch, usually somebody gets hit by a pitch every night, then we're going to do this hit by pitch thing. And our cameras are there and ready and willing to go. So we're pretty good about predicting things that we think will happen, and our guys just have to keep that locked and loaded in their brains so that when it happens, they're able to act on it, we're able to capture those content pieces.
Okay, very cool. All right, very good.
So I know that you're also the casting director. What do you do as a casting director?
So in addition to the players that we have, I mean, that's probably everyone is very familiar with. We have this giant cast of characters. I mean, I'm technically part of the cast as the host, but our DJs and announcers are all cast members. We have a dad bod cheerleading squad, the Bananas. There's like 6 or 7 guys there. They are part of the cast. We have a Bananas pep band, almost kind of like a marching band. They walk around and they play in the stadium, they perform at certain points, and then sometimes they just sneak up on people in the bathroom and play in there. Our tuba player likes to go in and blow that thing as hard as he can while people are in the bathroom. Very funny. They'll go in elevators and people will just come out, hold their ears. It's great stuff. We have a group, the Savannah Bananas, that is an all 65, I think they're all maybe 70, and a dance team. One of them is a Rowan alum, Nana Karen, head Nana. She went to Glassboro State College long before even I did. So there's 2 Rowan alums there. We have Princess Catassia is there. She's kind of, she gets compared to a Disney princess, but obviously a lot of little girls really love her and see her. They want to go connect with her. She's a super talented singer. So we have mascots, and the party animals have a cast for their shows. They have a bartender who's kind of like their water boy, but he's a Las Vegas flair bartender who can juggle and balance, and it's a crazy, wild show. So all those people, those are my people. So, and most of them are part-time, they don't work for us all the time, so I help coordinate their travel, I help coordinate all of our information, our meetings, what they're gonna be doing in the show, where they need to be. That's primarily my duties when we are outside of game time.
By the way, just so you know, Matt became full-time about a year ago. So, I mean, it just shows you this, you're experiencing this phenomenon of this this banana ball, this brand that's kind of erupted in sports really in the last few years. I mean, it's been around for a little bit. When would you say banana ball first started?
So the team was born in 2016. Okay. So it's only 8 years old, the team. And then it was still a collegiate summer league team. So it was a wood bat baseball with college players that are still, when their season ends, they're still getting their reps. They go to these collegiate teams, like the Cape Cod League is an example of that. They were part of the Coastal Plain League, which is in the Carolinas and in Georgia. And they just did all their shenanigans and fun around regular baseball. But they started realizing that there were things that were still slow and fans were still leaving. So Jesse and the team did a lot of studying on just fan behavior and realized about 2 hours into a baseball game, what happens? Everybody starts leaving. Sometimes it's that 7th inning stretch, but really it's about the 2 hour mark. And so that's one of the rules of banana balls, 2 hour time limit. So they started noticing these things, and they said anything that's boring or slow about baseball, it's not pulling people's attention, because we live in this fast-paced world where social media is everything, and it's these quick hits that keep people locked into things. They started figuring that out. They started testing banana ball in 2020. They did a few exhibition games and tried it out, and then 2021 we had the One City World Tour. And of course, the one city you're going to go to, if you go to any city for a One City World Tour, is Mobile, Alabama. And that is where they went for that first one. They had just lost their minor league team, and there was this demand. And Jay Peavy, former MLB player, a great friend of the Bananas, awesome guy as well. He is from there, he's from Mobile, and he was instrumental in helping kind of do that. So that was around the time I discovered the Bananas, and so that's when it started to creep on the radar. And then obviously 2022, you get Banana Land, and then now we're in, this is our 5th out of 6 Major League ballparks we're in this year, and 2 weeks from today, we're announcing our 2025 schedule for that World Tour, and that is going to blow people away with some of the things that we have in store.
Beautiful. I like that. It's good teeth right here.
I was gonna say, before a game starts and you go out there and do your thing, do you get nervous? And if so, how do you like control the nerves?
Yes, I do. And it depends. It's interesting. There's a lot that I'm doing live that's improv that is just unrehearsed, and that stuff doesn't bother me. I feel like I'm pretty good and comfortable on my feet and can just kind of react to things in real time. But it's the couple things I do that are very well rehearsed, but I've literally done hundreds and hundreds of times at this point. They're just big and they're important parts of the show, and I still get really nervous. I have to go out there and I have to iterate all 11 rules of Banana Ball. That's a lot of rules and there's a lot of language, and it's like a 2.5-minute speech, and I have it memorized, and I have certain hand gestures, and the hand gestures help my brain remember where I am so that I can kind of say where we are. And then I do that big hype intro that happens right before the starting lineup of the Bananas comes out. It's one of the few times in the show where everything else stops. Usually there's a million things going on, but now it's just dead quiet and it's me. And I'm standing on the pitcher's mound and I start this speech and I start approaching home plate. And even though I've done it hundreds of times, it's like music to me. I am sweating, I'm nervous, and like my brain is like, I don't know what comes next, but again, just like you're singing a song, it's not something you actively think about. I practice it so much, it's like music, like the words just come. Thank God, because I am usually really nervous, even still, especially as we get to these big places. I mean, I remember the first time we played Rickwood Field, which is the oldest ballpark in the country. It's in the MLB did their, they did a tribute to the Negro Leagues there this year at Rickwood Field in Alabama, and I remember that, and there were like 10,000 people, and that at the time was the largest audience I had. I was so scared and nervous, and now like 10,000 is one of the smaller places that we're at. So these big places are still intimidating. Yes, I get nervous, but it fires me up, it drives me. I know I got a lot of pressure on me, and I work pretty well under pressure, so I just go out there and do it.
Okay. Skylar, go ahead.
What has been some of your favorite experiences so far being with the team?
Getting to travel so many places is really, really cool, because I get to go places that I've never gone before and perform in unique locations. But I like a lot of the side quests that we do. Like if we have a free day and we can go and do things that we don't normally get to do. Like this year alone, I got to go in a hot air balloon in New Mexico. We went to this place in California, in Santa Cruz, California, with gravitational anomalies called the Mystery Spot. That was a super fun thing to do. The Goodyear blimp called me this year. I got to ride in the Goodyear blimp, which was like I literally been tweeting about it for years, and they were like, "Hey, we've seen you.
That was going to be
We want you to get." I mean, it's surreal and it's cool. And another thing that's cool too, especially I've talked about a little bit how I moved around. I had some good friends that I've drifted away from, because as you leave and as your adulthood sets in and you've got kids, it's easy to just drift apart from people. And a lot of my other friends have moved away. I've gotten to reconnect with a lot of people because now I'm coming to where they live. Like a bunch of my friends from Rowan are going to be at the game on Saturday that I haven't seen in like 10 or 15 years. Two of my roommates, two of my closest friends in the world when I was here, I haven't seen them in like 10, 12 years. One of them, I got to catch up with him in Houston when we were there. The other one, I got to meet his wife and his kids when we were in DC. And I haven't seen these guys in forever. We used to spend every day together. We used to work together. We used to hang out and do, lip syncs at the rec center together. And now we're, almost 4-year-old dudes and kids and all that stuff that we've just drifted. And so getting to see them, reconnect with parts of my past, and just explore everything that this country has to offer, all the cool things. Because man, there's cool things out there. It's just, that's a really excellent bonus part of this experience.
All right, good.
What part of working for like a new era of a new generation of baseball wise? Because just as they wanted to have like a new way of doing baseball, how do you feel with this type of new baseball wise?
There's no rules. We're making it up as we go. We get to be on the creative end of it. And as someone that started as an announcer, probably if I were, when I first started, if anyone had said, you're going to do this, the end goal in my brain probably would have been maybe be a ring announcer for the WWE or in the UFC. And both of those are really cool jobs. And who knows, maybe still on the table at some point. But I think I have a cooler job than those people. And I know that sounds like a weird flex, but I get to be creative. I get to write things. I get to contribute to the show and come up with brand new things. And I have the freedom to do that. Whereas if I was a ring announcer in the WWE, you're boxed in. Here's your role. Here's your job. Just do this. That's all you do. And I have this education. I have this experience. And I feel like the things I've learned help me be more creative. And so not only do I get to perform the same kind of way that those other performers do, but I have this ability to be creative in ways that most people don't. I'm on the ground floor of something revolutionary, not just in sports, I don't think, and certainly not just in baseball, but in entertainment. And I think we are impacting entertainment in profound ways that we're starting to see. I think more people are going to borrow from what we do because people that are spending their hard-earned money to come out to an event, everything's expensive now. I mean, I don't know how any of y'all are doing anything because I was broke in college and things were cheap. Things are not cheap now, and y'all still gotta be broke, I'm sure. Like, and that's not a knock at you. It's just that's life, right? You're not there. You're not making big boy, big girl money yet. How do you? So if you go to something, you really want it to be worth your time. We maximize that experience. If somebody goes to our game, they're gonna leave and going, "That was the most fun thing I've ever been to." There's plenty of events people go to where that's it. That's all you get. I think we are raising the bar for what expectations are. And so getting to be a part of something that I think is going to have that impact is just remarkably rewarding.
All right, right here.
How did you guys bring on the different teams, like brand new teams? Like, are they guys from the summer leagues too, when you guys first started?
Initially, it was a lot of guys that we borrowed from that played for the Bananas in the summer league. But since then, our talent pool has really increased. We have a lot of guys that come from a multitude of backgrounds in professional baseball. We have some guys that came out of the collegiate world, maybe they didn't get drafted, or maybe they got released, and they're still out there, still competitive, but not working at those levels anymore. Some guys we've taken from indie ball. Some guys, Jake Skoll with the Party Animals, he was a first-round draft pick way back when. So we've got a lot of talent coming in, and now as this brand and as this sport grows in awareness and its ability to impact them and just the fun that our players have, more and more ball players are looking at us now, I think, in a way where they go, I might want to go do that. Whereas maybe before that wasn't something that was on their radar. It's MLB or bust. Now people see that this is a fun, cool way and a way to make a living and continue playing baseball at a high level. So we're starting to get a very varied talent pool where they're doing a bunch of tryouts, like closed tryouts for players in the next couple of weeks. And I think the first one is actually this weekend in Sunday in Philly. I think that's when their first closed tryout for new banana ball players heading into next season is going to happen.
Very cool. Right here.
How long does it take you guys to make a script, and how far in advance do you guys do it?
As far in advance as I would like a lot of the time. There are certain elements of our show that remain relatively consistent, things that we consider traditions. Like we do, Hey Baby, we do the Hey Baby dance. That's always going to be the middle of the fourth inning. Like that's that spot, that's when we do it, that's where it is. We know that's in there. But we know there's a couple of new promotions because we have meetings every week coming up with new wacky ideas. We got a really outrageous idea. I'm not going to tell you what it is, I won't spoil it, but we got people are like, what did he just say? On the microphone on Saturday, we've got some really wacky stuff we're going to try this weekend. And we came up with that on Tuesday of this week. We had to buy costumes and we had to get all kinds of stuff ready for that. So certain things take shape maybe a couple of weeks in advance, depending on how big it is. I know we had a flyover when we were in DC from the Air Force and made these jets fly over. That was obviously something that's going to be mapped out further in advance. But typically, a week or two is what we do, and we kind of meet and we talk about what we want, and Jesse is very hands-on. He knows what he wants in the show, and every night we want different things, especially if we have like a 3-game series in a city. All the promotions need to be different, everything needs to look different every night. So we kind of go to our bag of tricks of what ones we like that are good and what ones are brand new. We plug those in, and usually the week of is when we kind of finalize all of that.
How many of you are familiar with Jesse Cole? Okay, all right. Not a lot. So tell about Jesse and how brilliant this guy is.
Jesse Cole, and I've heard people refer to him this way, he is the Walt Disney of baseball. And if you know anything about Walt Disney, like some of this might be boring to you guys, I don't know. I certainly didn't read about these guys and look into them when I was in college. It wasn't until I was an adult where I started kind of delving into my own educational pursuits. You learn about guys like Walt Disney who are just pioneers in what they do. He was a pioneer in animation, but then he was a pioneer in live entertainment. Like what he did for theme parks. Like theme parks were these seedy, like carnival, terrible atmospheres. What he did with Disneyland just revolutionized and changed that entire industry. That's one of Jesse Cole's biggest inspirations, him and P.T. Barnum and Bill Veeck, who's a legendary promoter in baseball of yesteryear. Jesse has taken inspiration from these people and he has brought that energy to baseball. And that's where the impetus for Banana Ball comes from. And he is a brilliant, brilliant man. I mean, I thought so before I met him, and now as I talk to him, you can see it. He moves fast, and he has a lot to keep up with. He has high expectations that if you're not meeting him, he's going to let you know. And that's good because it keeps our standard high, and I think it's what has enabled us to grow at the rate that we have. But he's a regular dude, and that's what's really cool too. It's this great story of someone who doesn't really come from anything special, doesn't come from privilege, doesn't come from money, and he was a pitcher who grew up in Massachusetts, who went to this small college in the Carolinas called Wofford College, and he had dreams of being drafted by MLB teams. He was getting letters from the Mets. His dream was to play in Fenway Park. He was the pitcher. And then I think he tore his rotator cuff, ended his career when he was in college, and then he took a job with this collegiate summer league team, and they were like the worst baseball team in the entire country. Like they were fan attendance of less than 200. They had no money, couldn't even pay himself. He got to be a general manager at like 23 or 24 years old out of college. He had a small team, big opportunity. Worst team in the country at the time, what were we gonna do? He said he went down there, and he remember sitting and watching the game one day, and he had this realization as he was sitting in the dugout. This is boring, is what he said. He loves baseball. This is a guy who grew up on it, who appreciates the game. He said, this is boring. It's no wonder that nobody is here. And he had this idea of, what if I got the players to dance? Right? Imagine that pitch to a straight up baseball team of guys that is not before the Savannah, long before we existed. This is long before the Bananas existed. This was, I think he was with the Gastonia Grizzlies at the time. And most of the guys looked at him like he was nuts and refused. But 4 or 5 guys said, I'll do it. And they learned this really basic dance. And they did it, and fans loved it. He's taking pictures and videos and posted it, and then more fans started coming. And he realized, and he says this, that was the moment he realized that we are not in the baseball business. We are in the entertainment business. Our job is to entertain people. Like the baseball is the product of the field, but if you want people to come out and enjoy it, it's because it's entertainment for them. So how do we maximize that? And that's the impetus of Jesse's idea. I mean, you read more of his story. I mean, he sold his dream home. His wife and him were down to their last dollar. They were living on an apartment that was in a really rough area of town in Savannah. When they bought the team, living on an air mattress. They had $30 a week for groceries, just so they could pay their other people and just get to opening day for the Savannah Bananas. And now I think we're doing pretty well from where they started. That was 2016 that was going on.
That's crazy. That's crazy. All right, who's next? Go right here.
So when it comes to promoting yourself to potential employers or your brand in general, what would your best recommendations to come across the people who you want to work for? What would that be?
For me now, or for someone just kind of aspiring where they are?
Whatever worked for you.
The asks now are a lot easier than they used to be, for obvious reasons, right? Like we had games broadcast on ESPN this year. We had games broadcast on True TV this year. I opened some of those broadcasts, so I can send stuff to people now, and it's a lot easier for me to obtain a gig outside of the Savannah Bananas, than it was when I was wrestling guy. And I have which again, I thought I was pretty accomplished then too, and I was doing some really cool things, and I had experience to work with cool people and cool athletes. I thought my resume was pretty good, but it's tough. I mean, it's the same as in anything. I mean, you've got to present yourself well. You have to put yourself out there. You've got to follow up with those contacts. You want to be, aggressive, but not too aggressive to turn people off to you. It's really the same, except, now, obviously, working with a brand like this, the ins are a lot easier than they used to be when I first started.
Thank you.
All right, right here.
So the Savannah Bananas first started, a lot of people had doubts about their longevity. when you applied to be what you are now, did you have any doubts on working with them long term?
No, and I still don't. I mean, and sometimes my wife will even ask me that. She goes, "Do you ever worry about this?" I go, "No," because I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what any of it holds. I don't need to. I mean, I remember working here when I started, and I remember one of the interview questions that people would always love to ask, and you guys will get asked it. It's my least favorite question to ask. Is where do you see yourself in 5 years? Right? Have you heard that question before? And if you're in a job interview, what do you think the right answer is? You're going to give some answer like, well, I expected to start with you, and then you move up the ranks as the years go on, and that's the answer that is expected. Well, I think about that question. I think it's a ridiculous question because I look back. I did a whole speech about this a couple years ago. I look back at my life at any 5-year increment, and there is absolutely no way that I ever would have predicted where I wound up 5 years ago. It's not even close. Like 5 years ago from right now, I was not with the Bananas. I was working in a mall in front of 6 people with pro wrestling. I was still teaching sports medicine and fitness technology. I have a son that's in college. I was going to military college. None of that was on the radar. And 5 years before that, so 10 years ago from right now. Then I'm 28. My daughter's a baby. I was getting ready, my job was kind of up in the air. That was when they were eliminating my position at that one university. I wasn't working in entertainment at all. I wasn't doing trivia, nothing. So this idea of needing to know where it'll go, I don't worry about that because here's one thing I do know. Here's one thing that life has taught me. I will figure it out. I will find a way. And I do believe we have longevity because we're not in the business of getting stale. I mean, we do 15 to 20, or 10 to 15 new things every single night in our show. Our show is growing. We refuse to let it get stale. And when you have this attitude of reinvention like that, I think you are hedging your bets against things getting stale and things kind of petering off. I mean, we have a demand of 3 million fans waiting to go. It's going to be a long time before we exhaust that. And even by that time, I have faith that we will continue to find new ways. And God forbid something happens with me, well then this was the step I needed to take to get to whatever that next step is. And I know that's going to be an awesome step too because they've all been good and they've all let me here. You guys have heard enough of my story tonight. None of it makes sense, but it all does make sense at the same time. Everything leads to something else. Everything matters. And so I don't worry about that. I gave up a career in education. I hated working in education. I did. I didn't enjoy it. I was working in high school. I was out there, I would go to shows on the weekend and I'd be performing in front of 10,000 people and I'd have teenagers run up and get autographs from me that night and I'd come the next day and it'd be like, bro. And I'm the same guy, I have the same energy, I'm bringing it in the classroom every day. As far as teachers go, they didn't care, so I didn't worry about that. I can't worry about what's next. I need to worry about where I am, and if I see something, if I see an opportunity, if I see something that's going to take me somewhere that I think is good, I follow that. And that has been a philosophy that I have done for the last 10 or 15 years, and it's always led me to the next best thing, and so I don't worry so much about that part of it.
All right, who's next?